Welcome to the Ello Vizion experience. I'm really excited to be here with my good buddy Cameron Schultz. Cameron Schultz is a card collector. He owns his company is called Cam's Card Collection, right?
Yep.
And so basically he collects baseball cards, Pokemon cards. Are there other cards too?
Yep, basketball and football. So I'm into, the three major sports, and I do a little bit of TCG, which is like Pokemon and anything that's like really like non-sport card.
That's awesome.
A little bit, yeah.
So what got you started with that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I've always been collecting cards. Me and my dad have collected cards since I was a kid. And then I kind of took a break, I would say around maybe sophomore year of college, from like my heavy collecting. And then COVID happened my senior year of college in May of 2020. Everyone's schooling got cut short. And, there was really nothing to do besides, the little bit of work that you were allowed to do and, like going to Walmarts and stuff and having fun. So I asked, my dad actually kind of brought it up. He's like, do you want to get back into cards again and like start, trying to see what we could do? Because, the card market was booming a little bit and he was noticing the early stages. I was like, yeah, you know what? Because to backtrack a little bit, prior to the whole card market blowing up, like, even if you don't know cards, you know that collectibles and cards have really exploded in the past like 3 years. The market wasn't really like this. Yeah, there was cards, every now and then that would sell for a few $1,000s or a few hundreds of dollars, but it wasn't in the volume that you're seeing. So when my collecting days, I would just like subsidize some cards I didn't want to put into some things that I did. So like my dad and I really liked the Yankees, the Knicks, and the Jets. So we would buy players in that we'd like. So we'd move cards, to make money to put it into stuff that we would enjoy.
That's pretty cool. So it sounds like your dad kind of was a big inspiration for you getting into cards.
Yeah, for sure. Back in the day, like the 90s and the 80s and stuff, that's what it all was. A lot of people, the card community was super strong back in the day with everyone. And that's what my dad did when he was my age and even like a teenager and stuff. So he kind of instilled that in me, and I've always liked sports, and he kind of brought cards into a young age for me. And then we kind of expanded because we saw what was happening, and it didn't happen in prior years that we were in the hobby. So we're like, maybe we can take advantage and, get back into collecting, which is our first love, but get and, make some money, or like, just have some fun doing it and see where this takes us. So I would say, in 2020 or 2021 is that when I established Cam's Card Collection, and basically,
and that's with your dad, right? You
right.
guys collaborate.
Yeah. So we collaborate. So my dad is the vintage guy and the knowledge on the older cards, and he has great knowledge of the new school cards. But we do it together, and it's fun at the end of the day because it's the hobby. We like collecting, and the making the money is the bonus, of course. So
yeah, and I think that's a cool tidbit for like any dads that are listening.
Yeah.
Cards could be a great avenue if you're trying to find something to bond with your son over that can also potentially become profitable.
Right.
I think that's like something that's really valuable in like a father-son relationship where the father can not only teach you how to have a love for something like baseball or whatever game, but also can teach you something that over time will be very financially beneficial to you. So kudos to your dad for getting you started with that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it is cool. I think you brought up a cool point. It does teach like when I'm in the hobby and stuff, I notice like the young dad and the young kid, and I attribute to that how I started, but these little kids now have much more crazier cards than I did back in the day. But it teaches you a lot of good things. It teaches you like money management. It can teach you how to be entrepreneurial in many of ways. And it's kind of a good framework. If you like sports, your playing career, unless you're going to be a professional athlete, it ends someday. So this is just like a cool way to keep your love for the sport up. I've played sports, through my whole life, but unfortunately it comes to a end inevitably. So, this is another avenue where I love watching sports. Sports is a big part of my life. I blog about sports. So
yeah, that's right. Is you still working with Pro Sports Extra?
I still blog for Pro Sports Extra, which is like if you know what Barstool Sports is, we're not like a knockoff of that, but we do many of the similar things. So like
podcasting
and sports talk and we talk about the entertainment that's happening today. So we do many of things like that. So
that's why it's fun for me to have you on, honestly, because I feel like during the conversation at some point I would love to talk a little bit about sports and stuff, because I feel like you probably know more about that.
Sure.
I never have been an athlete, don't know anything about any sport. You ask me the difference between a football and a baseball, I probably would mix them up. So it's cool to have people on to talk about things that I really know nothing about.
Right.
But speaking of things I know nothing about, back on the topic of cards, I was doing some research and I saw that there's different types of collections people build. Yeah. And I wasn't sure. Do you have like a certain niche that you really have narrowed it down to?
So
like I saw, for example, there was certain collections that they specifically look for cards that have an American flag or where the pitcher is throw-in or whatever.
Sure. There's certainly niches of cards, and there's different sets and stuff. So collectors like to build sets. So like, for instance, I can show you some cards that I like brought on the pod.
Yeah.
And so this is a Select card, which is a brand of football cards, but it's also a brand. Yeah, it's also a brand of basketball, and it's a brand of baseball cards as well. But there could be people out there that are looking to complete the set of 2020 Panini Select for football, and there's so many different variations and colors and brandings of cards. So there can be people that fill sets. Like my dad, a big thing back in the 90s and the early 2000s was completing like Upper Deck baseball for the Select year. So my dad has pretty much every set of Upper Deck from 1990 up to 2010, and it's you either complete the set by buying the set, which is like kind of costly, or you can do a non-traditional route and try to put the cards together, going out them and buying them singularly. Like, you buy
them together,
piecing them together. So this is an Emmanuel Quickly Flux Gold out of 10. Like if you look on the card, the back of the card, it says 3 out of 10. So there's only 10 of these cards out in existence.
Wow. So what does something like this go for?
I actually just recently sold this on eBay, and I sold it for $80. I mean, Emmanuel Quickly is not the highest name player, but it's also what diminishes the value of it being, if this was like a Panini Prism card, which is a different brand, it'd probably be worth like $500 to $600. But it's Flux. Wow. The Flux brand is brand new.
So just that little tiny difference can really make
can diminish the card.
Difference.
But I mean, there's only 10 of these out there in the world, and I own one of them.
Yeah, so that's really cool alone in itself.
People that's another thing that collectors like. They like low serial numbered cards. So
and now too, the thing is, I'm sure there's probably maybe a really small niche, but maybe a person that really just wants those cards.
Sure, there definitely is.
And they might be willing to pay even more than the value, no?
Yeah, because what these cards are called are super short print, because obviously if you have a card that's numbered, there's only whatever the end number is. So in this instance, there's 210, and I have a card right here that's numbered, and it's numbered out of 249. So there's only 249 of those cards out there.
So is the other one that you just showed me, though, is that probably the most valuable in this stack here, then?
No. This Joe Burrow by far is the most valuable.
And what's the number on that
It's not numbered. Oh, but how much is it worth?
Yeah.
It's worth about $350 market, but it's not numbered at all. But
so then how does that one develop in evaluation?
That's a good question. So Joe Burrow is...
just based on the player.
Just based on the player, what it is. So it's a quarterback, and that's a premier position in the football market. People tend to, only want to go after quarterbacks because they command the most money. He just went to the Super Bowl this past season. It's a purple Prism card, which it's a short print card, and also it's a PSA 10. So PSA 10 is the highest grade that you can get. It's on a grading scale of 1 to 10, obviously. 9s are very expensive too, but 10 is as best you can get. Means there's no, nothing wrong with the card. It's perfectly centered. The surface is great. There's nothing wrong with it.
So this card isn't numbered.
No.
But is there like a number of them that exist that you know of? Or?
So what you can do actually is you can go and scan the barcode, and you can tell how many of these cards are graded. So that's what brings
graded versus, and what's the difference? Graded versus printed? Because I'm sure I don't know, and I'm sure there's other people listening that might not
graded
know.
means see how it's graded by the company PSA. That means PSA put a slab on the card to solidify and protect it. This would be called a raw card because it's not in a slab. It's how it is. But if this was graded, you would bring up the value tremendously. Grading your cards bring up the value of your card because you're protecting it, you're slabbing it, you're saying the condition is phenomenal. Like this one is an 8, so that's like a lower grade, but that's actually a pretty high grade for a die cut because these die cut cards are a little bit harder to grade, and that's why this one is $300 to $400 because it's a die cut. It got a 10, which is as best as it can be, and that's what really kind of brings up the value of your cards. So yeah, you protect the card, you give it a grade, and you're encasing your card basically. So that's what brings up the value.
So now, how do you guys go about sourcing? I know you said sometimes you'll buy a whole pack, or sometimes you'll buy individuals. I know that you had told me one time. I remember you said you were going to the store to just buy packages of cards, and then you guys, do you source through them and look for the most valuable ones? Or?
Yeah. So it was funny. So during the pandemic and stuff, cards got all the attention of everyone. So you'd go to your Walmarts and you try to, you'd kind of do a degenerate form of gambling. You'd buy a pack and you hope that you pull, a crazy value of cards, whether it's like a $500 or $600 card or $200 or whatever. But then it became harder to buy cards because everyone wanted them. There's people getting in fights worldwide. So like Walmarts and stuff limited the quantity you could get of a particular box or product. And then what the companies did to negate resellers was they brought the values of the boxes up, so it's harder to make money if you pull a card because you're paying more for the box. So me and my dad always open cards, but I'd say a main way we can source and make a good amount of money is just buy the cards that you want out of the set, opposed to
going like on eBay or
right. So if there's a card that you're looking for in a product that's only worth $50, why are you spending $300 to potentially pull that card? You should probably just go out, to a show or a card shop or eBay and pay the $50 because you'll save money in the long run and you'll end up making more money because if that card goes up, you cash in on it, or if you want to go grade it, then you spend whatever it is to get graded, and then hopefully it comes back a 9 or a 10, and then you can 2, 3, 4x your money on it.
No, that makes
sense.
sense.
It's like a smarter way to do it than to go out there and waste a bunch of money on boxes and product.
So now, obviously, currently in the world, we got a lot of things going on with the economy. Specifically, gas prices are up. Food shortages are going on, even a baby food shortage.
Formula.
Baby formula, the baby
crazy.
formula shortage. All these crazy things going on. And I'm wondering, does that affect the card market at all? Does the price of the cards go up?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's certain materials that are in those that might be imported. I don't know if it's just specifically, because some of the things on it, like
I know
that like color to it and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what that
more
exactly
than just
is.
Cardboard, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think is you were seeing, because the hobby really boomed. Prices were 3x, 4x what it was 2 years ago for particular cards or players or whatever it is. So I think what you're seeing is less FOMO in the card market. As dumb as it probably sounds for people that don't know sports cards, it is a market at the end of the day. There's a market in every facet of every business, of every industry.
And there's supply and demand.
Of course. So I think what you're seeing is people that came into the hobby 3 years ago, for the first time ever, when the cards were going, parabolic and just up. I think you're seeing people getting smarter and knowing what true value of cards is. People are buying a $3,000 card, 4 or 5 months ago that's only selling for $1,000 now. And I don't think that's because the player's doing worse or, the card's not in that
So not
demand.
necessarily the buying, but the selling is being affected, it sounds like.
Sure. The selling, because people got into cards for too much, so they're not, say for instance, I got into this card for $300, which I didn't. If somebody offers me $100 for it, I'm not going to take it.
Yep.
So now I'm flooded with all these assets that I can't sell because I got into them too high. So it's just like how the stock market and things work at the end of the day.
What we're seeing with crypto right now, I mean, it seems especially like Bitcoin in the current time, once again, 30 days from now, I don't know, maybe it'll boom and we'll have a crazy month. But currently, obviously, it's been kind of sitting right around that 25 to 35K range for like the last couple of months.
It could be fear too. There's always fear associated with the unknown. And when you see inflation and interest rates go up, the house... what? I don't truly believe, and I'm not a finance person and not an economics, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But currently where we're at, I don't think we're in a recession right now because when you see the demand for houses, when you see certain demands for cars, when you see certain demands for baby formula or food or whatever it may be, those aren't signs necessarily of a recession. Those are signs of we can't really keep up with the demands.
See, what I would say is, I agree with you, like, there's still the demands going on, but I do think it's a symptom of something developing.
Right, no.
So maybe the recession's not quite fully in bloom yet, or whatever it becomes if we go into a full depression, who knows. But I do think what's going on right now is a symptom of what's going on.
I think you see that, and what you see as an effect of the Feds pumping in so much money into the economy, giving stimulus. This is an effect of also the stimulus packages. You can't have the government printing out so much money, $1,400 to give to every single American that's making less than whatever 60 or 70 grand a year, and then expect our economy to be great. But I mean, again, I take what I say with a grain of salt. I don't have a degree in finance or anything in that realm, but what I do know is what I see, and you can compare things to history before.
See, the thing is, though, you flip the coin, and on the other side, a lot of people wouldn't have even made it through COVID probably without that little bit of stimulus,
I'm not saying the stimulus package is bad or it's good.
I agree. It's like they needed to plan it better or structure it in a different way.
And stop shelling out it so many times. There's people, when I got my taxes done, the CPA said, did you receive the third stimulus package? And I go, I didn't even know there was 3. And he goes, yeah, not a lot of people knew there was 3. They just had an additional X amount of dollars in their account that was deposited. You weren't given a notice really by the, through the mail or anything. You just received it. And I was like, no, I did not receive it. And we went through my accounts to make sure it wasn't there, and I didn't receive it. So it just shows like it wasn't advertised, the third one, as much, or people didn't know about it. So when certain things like that happen, you have to know that nothing is ever free.
No, yeah. And, the thing is, I think a lot of people have taken the perspective that, this was a softener to being, like, pushing us more towards a socialist system.
Right.
Because obviously in those systems, people are usually given a wage of some sort that's guaranteed by the government. Well, things are divvied up to different communities and different people. So it's like, I feel like we are getting closer to that.
Universal basic income.
Yeah, the universal basic income, exactly.
That's a big proponent of the...
honestly, you could argue even that years back, universal healthcare was kind of doing that. But at the same time, I personally think universal healthcare is important. I think people need that. And I think there's a lot of poor people that would not have healthcare, myself included. There's been times in my life where I needed to be on that.
Right.
So it's like being on that is... it shouldn't make anybody feel like less or worse.
Look at countries like Sweden and Canada that benefit highly from that. And, Sweden, for instance, they're a wealthier nation comparatively speaking to a lot of the world. And they do it great. And like other European countries that are more, I would say, developed as us, where, mothers get, 3 months of paternity leave, 4 months, 5 months of whatever leave that they need because they had a baby and different things like that. I just think we're in a different world and different times. 30, 40 years ago, there was no such thing as crypto. There was no such thing as Web3. There was, maybe even 40 years ago, the internet was just coming around. So I think it's how you develop and how you progress, and things are different and times are different. So you move with the wave. I don't know necessarily what this means for the future. I think there's a lot of political grab in place. I think this is an important time for a lot of I think there's political grab too right now on both sides in a way. Sure.
Because each side is polarizing the other.
That's
in a sense of like, if you're a Republican, people immediately assume this, and this. And if you're a Democrat, people immediately assume you're this, and this.
There's connotation to everything. Like I said, I don't know what stage we are in the world. I know things are bad that should be better, and we need to be coming together as people to have voices heard, and you can talk about all this, that, and the third. But, we talk about it privately and publicly, and so it's going to be interesting to see. Like, we're so, I don't know, it seems we're so past a lot of, like, old things. We have crypto, we have what's the next thing for Web3, and we see people that are making crazy money off of the two. So it's like, where are we going?
Well, and speaking on those and kind of backtracking to baseball cards and sports cards.
Yeah.
How do you feel, as a card collector in this emerging NFT market? Obviously, I feel like now the NFT market has become more saturated over the last 6 months, but it's still a relatively new concept, and a lot of people don't even know what NFTs are, which maybe we could talk about that in a minute. But, I'd love to know what your perspective is on how that could affect the baseball card market, and, will it replace it? Will the two merge at some point? What do you think is going to happen?
During the pandemic, I think you saw the NBA put out a product. It was called Top Shot, and people made a lot of money on it, and people lost a lot of money.
This was an NFT they did?
Yep. It was an NFT, and what it was, I mean, it started like right around 2021, I think. And what it was is the NBA was like sharing moments of players. So it was a video, of like say Emmanuel Quickly, and he was dunking, and you could own that moment. And there was different tiers of the moment that made that crypto more rare. So like there was like a silver, which was like the basic, and then there was all the way to like a 1 of 1, where this is like the only one that exists. And it was just like a moment in time. LeBron James sold for the most, and I think it was an iconic dunk of his, and it sold for like $250,000 at auction. But the problem with it is, and the problem with crypto right now and NFTs right now, is what's the utility?
See, that's where I do see that there's going to be a major utility, right?
Right.
A major utility is going to come into play once we're really pushing the augmented reality and VR. So this initial stage we're in of NFTs is pivotal to making sure that it works and the system Web3 works once you transfer it all over to the augmented reality that we're creating. You know, like the metaverse that's being created, obviously, but there's multiple metaverses being created too. You know, there's Mark Zuckerberg's doing it, Microsoft is doing their own. So all these companies are going to start doing their own, and then what's going to happen is eventually, I think, actually, I would be surprised if baseball cards within the next year aren't being created as 3D assets that can be held and interacted with in these virtual environments.
Sure.
Because once you have those too, it's going to save production costs. It's going to, in ways, it'll increase the values of some cards probably, or have probably level out similar to the way the current card market is, because I'm sure there's cards out there that are worth $1 million and there's cards that are worth $20. So there's the same thing with NFTs. So that's where I think the utility comes in. Now, with baseball cards, I think the utility may be, only has so far it can go. But the utility of NFTs in general will drastically increase, especially, I know that there was something that I had seen where, eventually they want to make it so all currency is a cryptocurrency, and when you're in this virtual environment, augmented reality, you'll be able to walk into a store, and rather than sliding your card or handing cash to the cashier, you will virtually have a virtual money that you can throw towards the cashier, and it'll just automatically deposit into their account.
Isn't that crazy? So I don't know necessarily like competition, so like values offhand that I talk to with collectors that are like versed into the NFT community or have NFTs is there's something more valuable about having a card, looking at it, knowing, population counts or how many of that card's out there, or how rare a card is versus, I have a Bored Ape and it connects me to a great network of people.
You have one? Or you're just saying hypothetically? I was going to say,
I wish I had
if you had a Bored Ape, you probably wouldn't be sitting here with me right now.
No, I would. No, but I'm just saying, like, comparatively speaking, what does that NFT, the collectible community in general, it covers a wide range of things. There's always different things that you can collect, whether it's, sneakers, there's people that collect action figures, there's people that collect rocks. So it's all comparatively speaking. So I don't know that necessarily baseball cards or basketball or football cards necessarily butt heads with NFTs. I think they can work collaboratively. I think they can work. I think there's a lot of different things that you do. I think you see certain guys like Steve Aoki, for instance, is a huge card collector, and he has a huge NFT line of himself. And he has huge NFTs of him as baseball cards that he puts like moments of him DJing in a card. The NFT looks like a card or whatever. So, I mean, I'm sure they will mix, and for better or for worse. But I think that's a big thing when I talk to people that I don't own a single NFT. I don't know if you own any.
I have a few, but nothing crazy. Yep, some small time ones.
I have more crypto than I do. Like, I buy Ethereum a good amount. Like, I have a recurring reinvestment into Ethereum just because.
All right, and what's your Ethereum number?
Yeah, I wish. Do you want my gas and everything? Yeah. That's one of my, like, with my Roth IRA or, like, a 401k or anything, that's one of my subsidized things. I will always put money into that and some ETFs that I have that I play around with. But I'm not, like, a day trader. I don't own, Microsoft.
Yeah, I'm personally, the stock market, I'm very, very, like, so far removed from it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah,
but NFTs and crypto, I'm more involved in.
I have just the basic QQQ, VOO, which follows like all the major companies like Tesla, Microsoft, Facebook. has a pie of that. So I have some reoccurring investments monthly in that, and I have life insurance policies that are like active where I can pull money out, leverage it on a house and other things that have more of a utility for me, and I'm young, so
that's really smart. So tell me a little bit about that, because I personally don't have that.
Right.
I think that's probably valuable information for somebody out there.
So
how to plan that.
All the rich people in the world, all the celebrities, everyone that has money has a life insurance policy. And what they're doing is, all their businesses are not in their name. They're in LLCs. They're in everything else. And they put money into this, retirement life insurance account, life policy. And they can pull out the money and they can use it on a house or to buy a car. And it's not their money. They invest money into it and it cannot be taxed. So you can and I'm not doing a great job explaining it, but this is the basis of I know, because this is what I would like to do with it. I put money in every month. It occurs money because it's being invested and everything else, and those numbers are being crunched into different ETFs and different policies and different funding and bonds, and it grows money monthly. And then you can take that money out and you can put it into assets, so like a house.
Yep.
I can put, $100,000 into a house.
So when you're not touching it, it's automatically being diversified, basically?
Right, it's being diversified. So it's a bunch of different things, and ETF. It's mainly in ETFs, like bonds and different things that annually always go up.
Yeah, always guaranteed increase.
Yep. Like 3.5% a year, I think, is basically guaranteed to do. It can do more than that, but it can't really do less. So I can leverage that money out. I can take it out of the life insurance policy, put it towards a house. I don't get taxed on that money, and the money ends up going back into the account. So it's like this cycle of you can take money out, it goes back in, it keeps being used, and nobody's, there's no liens against you, there's no taxes being against you, there's no deductions. So it's this ever-streaming wealth machine. And all like the smart rich people in the world, who talks about this a lot, and they talk very well about it, and you can watch? Waka Flocka. He talks about this with the guy that you did the music video with, the $100,000.
Oh, with Gilly the King, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about it with Gilly the King on the Barstool podcast, and he talks about it kind of eloquently, actually. So if you want to check that out, it's like a 10-minute spot. You can look it up where he talks about the life insurance policy, but it's smart. It's non-taxable money. You put it into hard assets that continue to make more money, or you can, if you wanted to buy a car, you could do that and then get the money back and put it in. So I want to do that with real estate. When I get, in about 4 to 6 months, I'm looking to buy a house, and
now you're going to start with buying a single family or multifamily?
I'm going to buy a duplex. I think that's the biggest. Plan. I think that's the best.
As big as you want to go at the beginning, right? Just to get your feet wet, but
I think I want to get my feet wet. I want to understand. I am constantly always educating myself on real estate. We were in a real estate realm together for a little bit. So once I got into that, opened my eyes to things. I'm always constantly researching and understanding certain things that I didn't know before. But I think this would be a good thing for me to continue to learn. And it's just a great way to have passive income, or, owning something. And then once I live there for about a year to 8 to 12 months, then I'll get my second one. And then I'll go bigger from there, where I'm buying like 2 to 3 within a few month period. And then you just continue to get more doors under your belt.
Yep.
And I think that's a big thing. And, I don't know where I was just inspired by the certain people and the bigger people that we were around in the space, and saying if they can do it, I can do it. It doesn't. You don't need to be.
Shout out Bruno and Marco. That's actually a cool thing to segue into. How you and me first met.
Yeah,
because we collaborated on this cool podcast. We didn't end up getting as far, all of us, as we wanted to, but I think overall the team effort was awesome, and I had a great time working with all you guys. So it's pretty cool.
I did as well. So we met.
Because your background before that was specifically in marketing mainly, right?
Sure.
Is that like where you were
going? I graduated from Eastern in 2020, and I graduated in a weird time. And I had my concentration was on television production, funny enough, and public relations with a little bit of marketing in there. I think Eastern, college isn't for everyone. Eastern was for me, and they put me in a great position as far as knowing a lot of people in the industries for both television production and marketing. I had 2 really great internships that I don't have.
I have to say, that was a great way you just put that, too. College isn't for everybody, but Eastern was for me.
It was for me.
And, I think that's how...
It totally was, because I learned a lot about myself. I became into this professional realm while, being able to work while I was in school, and having the university give some things back to me. I knew what I was getting into, I didn't mindlessly go through. I took advantage of every opportunity that was presented, and then it's done well for me, I'd say.
I think that's actually a really important thing too, is a lot of young people that are getting into that stage where they're going to look at colleges, and the problem is, so many people, and myself included, I actually went to school for a whole year for a degree that I ended up hating, pulled out.
Right.
I was in studying alternative medicine. Didn't fit my energy or what my desires were. And I think the reason I rushed into that was because I didn't think critically about what I'm doing. I'm spending all this money to go to this place, and I think some people really, college isn't necessarily what you need. Maybe some people would do better in a trade, and that's where they go. Or some people would be better starting a business or real estate, or so I feel like I'm glad to see that the stigma around having to go to college is kind of, in the workforce, I think it's still there, but I think it's starting to dissipate.
Corporate world, sure.
Yeah. It's slowly but surely dissipating, and people are starting to think, well, I could still do something without a degree. And I know some of the most successful people I know don't even have degrees.
I'll backtrack with you a little bit, and then we'll talk about where we met. My brother's a perfect example. My brother, he graduated before the pandemic as well. He graduated high school in 2018, I believe, 2019. Mm-hmm. And so he went to school he went to community college for 2 years because he didn't really know what he wanted to do, and he was figuring it out. And it took time for him to get his associate's degree. When that came up, the world shut down. We were kind of in a similar boat. And he's like, he wanted to go into the police academy, He didn't know what he was going to do. And then he seized opportunity. He saw that they were putting on a great security seminar to become a licensed security agent in the state of Connecticut. He took that, and now he's, just turned 21, and he's probably making, even though it's a job and security and everything, he's making more money than a lot of his friends and a lot of people his age in 21. And it's just like taking advantage of opportunity. He didn't graduate from a 4-year degree, but he saw opportunity, and he's rolling with it, and he's doing a great job. So yeah, it
goes to show too. It's like sometimes people, somebody might, not your brother, might have gone into that and started the licensing, and been like, oh, I hate this.
No.
But he went forward with it, and now he's reaping the benefits of that.
I credit him.
So sometimes that's good too. Is like, even though critically thinking about what you're going to spend all this time to learn is
right.
Sometimes it's good to just jump in with both feet. I think too.
Yeah.
For some people that works. So you kind of have to go with your gut. But at the same time, I think some people don't even do that. They're like, the world's telling me I need to go to college, so I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to get a psychology major or a business major, just because everybody around me is doing it, and it's what's right.
Yep.
Whereas just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's right for you.
No.
And like that's back to your point where you said, Eastern was for me.
Yeah.
And it worked for you.
Yeah.
Not that this is a plug for Eastern. But
No. I'm just saying.
If you want to go there, if it's for you,
right. I'm just saying. It was for me at the time, and I, attribute a lot of my growing. I needed to grow. I'm
gonna hit up Eastern after this. We're getting a commission for this, bro. No.
That was a big thing for me. I was graduating high school and everything. You don't know what to do. You don't know. It's scary. Senior year of high school is probably one of the scariest years of my life to date, because there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of pressure on you to decide. But I knew one thing: I needed to grow personally, professionally. And I needed to focus in what I wanted to do with myself. I couldn't be the 17-year-old kid for the rest of my life. Granted, I wanted to be.
I think everybody does. Nobody wants to grow up, dude.
As granted as I wanted to be. So I think it was good for me. It molded, not the thinking or anything, but some of, the experiences that I had at, different internships and being around other powerful people that helped me a lot. So it's helped me where I am now. So to backtrack to your story.
I want to actually go back to baseball cards for a bit here. So I did some research myself, and, obviously I'm not as versed in the topic as you.
Of course.
But I feel like, it's pretty cool to mention, like, I didn't realize that baseball cards have been around since 1868. I guess Peck and Snyder created them, and they were originally in like the 1880s. They were marketing them through putting them in cigarette packs.
Yeah. So actually, the most valuable sports card ever is a Honus Wagner T80 baseball card, and it was a cigarette.
It's the most valuable, you said?
Most valuable sports card that has sold recently at auction, or one of the most.
You gotta tell me that number. That's gonna probably disgust me.
So one of the most valuable sports card ever. It has not sold, but it's estimated to be a $35 million value.
Holy
it's not the Honus
shit.
Wagner. It's actually a 1952 Mickey Mantle. Rookie, Mickey Mantle rookie. It's a PSA 10, and it's a pop one. There's no higher.
Does anybody know who the owner?
Oh yeah,
is?
yeah. There's the owner's very public about it, so it's worth about $35 million. But the funny story about why that card's valuable is because in 1952 they were printing cards like crazy. You could find them in Macy's and bigger like outlet stores like that.
Wait, so that card's in 1952.
Yep.
So the most valuable one is actually 100 years after the original.
Yep.
So you would my immediate thought would be if you had a card from 1860, that would be the most valuable in the world.
So let me tell you a story on why of the scarcity. That's a main reason why it's the most valuable. It's one of the most iconic cards ever because of the scarcity and kind of because of the backstory. So the story goes, the backstory of the card is, so in 1952, cards are being printed a lot. It's becoming a very common thing in American culture and in Americana, basically. People love baseball is America's pastime. Everybody back then is going to baseball games.
Yep.
You're looking up to these people who are like plumbers in their like real everyday life, but they're professional baseball players and they're getting paid a couple $1,000.
Wow,
So
I didn't think of that either. I was just assumed baseball players and sports athletes.
No, so
were
back then
making
in the
money.
50s and the 40s and stuff, these guys were everyday people.
Wow.
That had some celebrity to them eventually and stuff as they're making more money and getting more money for Major League Baseball and other things like that. But in 1952, a lot of these cards are being printed, and there's no place to put them. They're in huge warehouses, and they're taking up a lot of space, and nobody are buying them because there's so many. So everybody's buying them, but there were so many cards printed. They can't.
That once people stop buying them, now you have this huge surplus.
So there's huge surplus in Macy's, and so what they did was they're like, we have no place for them. So what did they do? They threw them in the Hudson River. These boxes.
Oh wow!
And at the bottom of the Hudson River,
those are probably valuable.
There is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Obviously, when you pull the cards out, they're wet. They're going to be terrible now. But there's hundreds of $1 million.
Well, were those ones packaged like this back then, like with this plastic?
No, so they would just come like this is called a top loader, which just like protects the card. But they would come raw, just like this. And maybe people protected them back then, but no, because they would just play games with them. Who could throw them closest to the door gets $5. But
so now cards that have stayed within their toppler, those are worth more. I'm assuming,
sure,
right? Yeah.
Sure. If they're in nicer condition,
just like coins, coins are like that. If they're sealed, then they're worth significantly more.
So a lot of those cards from 1952 that had the Mickey Mantle and are like destroyed. They're at the bottom of the ocean, or people didn't think back in 1952 that this card's going to be worth $1 million or even thousands of dollars. So they crumple them up, throw them, play with them, go to bed with them. Put them in bookmarks.
There was probably cards that they wouldn't even have thought that there would be $1 million.
Sure,
card,
you can't fathom that.
$1 million back then was like significantly more than it is now.
Something?
Yeah, probably close to that.
So
something like that.
Right. So you got to think people didn't treat their cards like commodities back then. There wasn't this market.
They were just a neat little thing to have.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why the Mickey Mantle, because there's only so many out there that are even graded like 1s or 2s or 3s. And this one is graded a 10, which is population ones in pristine condition. So it's estimated that's worth $30 million. It kind of privately sold a year ago or 5 to 10 years ago for like $1 million. That's what it said, but it's private. So you don't know the sale because it's not to the public. But to go back to your point of the 1800 card, there's a Honus Wagner T80. It's from a cigarette like pack. I think that's how the cards were made back then. And the baseball player Honus Wagner was a Christian, so he didn't like the fact that little kids had to get his card through a baseball. Through cigarettes,
yeah.
Like he was very against that because he was a Christian man, so he didn't like the smoking and everything, and he didn't like that to get his card. Little kids had to get a pack of cigarettes, and because they could potentially
that's
smoke
double
them.
marketing.
So what he would,
the tobacco companies were raking in from baseball.
So what he did was he went to the distributor and was like, "I'm gonna buy all your cigarette packs," and he bought them all, and he had them destroyed.
Wow.
And so there's there's 3 that are known in the world that exist that are graded and are everything.
And those are from 1860s somewhere?
Yeah, or the early 1900s, something like that. And it sold for like 4.6 at auction.
This is recently it sold at auction.
Maybe a few years ago. That's like one of the only public sales, because there's like only 2 or 3 that are known out in existence. Because
it makes sense too, because you don't really have to do a crazy big public sale for something this small.
Right?
You know?
No.
It can be very. I'm sure, especially amongst the very elite wealthy.
I'm sure, like big cards that are worth $1 million and stuff, their sales are made public just to flex that this card sold for X amount of dollars. But there's a lot of quiet sales still of modern cards to bring up the value of cards. If a card sells for $1.5 million and that card is really worth $2 to $3 million, and there's people out there that are privately buying it, they don't want to let that knowledge be known to everyone, because that diminishes the value of that super card that not a lot of people can buy. So that's the problem I have with public sales versus private.
If you had to guesstimate, what do you think is like the overall economy of baseball cards?
And like sports cards
in general? Sports cards in general. Like, as far as collectively, how much money do you think is moving between these? Billions?
Billions a year. I think there was actually a write-up by Forbes. I think last year through they did it through even like eBay and like auction houses like that. It was like $3.1 billion were moved like commerce-wise through like major. So you have to think it's even more, because there's private sales where, like, prior to this, I met up with someone in a parking lot and we did a trade in some cash for this card. So that sale's not publicly tracked. So you have to even think that the number is significantly higher than $3 billion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's only like on eBay or like selling platforms like, like a Macari or like a Facebook. There's, or like I go to a lot of card shows. Those, people that have established businesses are writing down, certain expenses and stuff if you have LCSs or stuff. But like Joe Schmo, who sets up there on the weekends just to make some money and he has a 9-to-5 job, he's not writing down if he sold this card for $100 to someone. So how's that money being tracked? So, I mean, you have to think it's a multi-billion dollar industry.
In your experience buying and selling cards, where do you think has been, not to give away your secrets, but where's the best place, do you think, for people to go out if they want to do this? Where do they go to find the best priced cards?
I'll give some advice.
And the best priced for a return on investment.
So
obviously.
I think in life you need to know this, and in business you need to know this. You need an important thing to know is margins, right? You're not making money at the end of the day unless you can understand profit and losses and things like that. So I think a great way to get started for a minimal, sure, you can go out there and you offer somebody $150 for this, they take it, and then you resell it on a platform like eBay, or you resell it to someone for $250 and you keep that $100 moving, sure. But not a lot of people have $100 to spend on, cards or something if they're getting into it. So I always say the greatest way to get some deals is going to card shows or reaching out to people on Facebook. And I think card shows, what there is there things that are called value boxes. And for people that know cards, they know what I'm talking about. And it's basically like 4-row racks of single raw cards in a box, and you can go through, and they're usually people typically sell them for $1 to $2, and you just put in work looking for cards. And that's one of my favorite ways to make some stupid money in this hobby. You go through the box, $1 to $2 cards, and you occasionally pull out a card that's $10. Okay, so you do that 10 times, that's $100. Granted, if you can do that. Or you can occasionally go through a dollar box sometimes, and I know plenty of people that do this. You can find cards that are worth $20, $50, $60 that people are just throwing in here because they just want to move it quick. My greatest story is, that I like to tell, is I found a $60 card in a dollar box.
Do you know what it was? What card it was?
It was a Bowman Chrome of a prospect that was numbered out of 50. So it was a gold card out of 50 of just like an unnamed player, but people like to collect prospects in baseball because that's a...
So he is a newer player?
So he's a prospect. So that means he's so Major League Baseball is the top level of baseball, and then you have levels to get up to Major League Baseball. You don't just start. So you have AAA, Single A, Double A, and when you get to AAA, that means you're on the cusp of making the major. So you have developmental leagues that help you.
So
get
are
up.
all three of those categories considered prospects?
Yep. So
okay, that makes sense.
If you're in Single A, you're a prospect. Double A, you're a prospect. AAA, you're a prospect. And usually what happens is your first ever prospect card will have a first Bowman in front of it, and that means that's your first ever card printed. Like collectible trading card out there. So it was a Bowman first of a hotter prospect, and it was numbered out of 50, so that brought the value up. And I didn't even check, I'm going through the box, and I'm like, that card might be valuable, so I put it to the side. And then when I went home and looked up the value, it's worth $60, but I'm into it for, $1 at the time. So I tell people, and I tell young collectors or people getting into the hobby, if you want to make some money so you can eventually get bigger cards like this and you're not putting up a ton of money, you know, you start flipping cards that you can find in dollar boxes for, $5-10 that you're in for $1, because then that's just money and you're bringing it in, and then eventually you can move up with that same money and get it into cards like this, or even a card like this that's probably worth $80 to $100, or even a card like this that's worth $50 to $60. So I say that's some of my advice. Go to card shows, put in the work on a weekend, believe in yourself, have knowledge, and be willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
I know people that don't like the philosophy that are entrepreneurs and stuff of grinding because, the time is valuable to them. But you have to start out first working your way where you can take away time from something.
Well, and in a way, I almost think about it like this too. To a lot of people, not all people, some people this isn't true, but the phrase time is money, right?
Yeah.
Time is money, and what do you have to spend to get results? Money.
Sure.
So in some cases, you're not spending physical money, you're spending time that you could have made money to make money in another way.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hear like Grant Cardone, someone that says, I hate the concept of saying you got to grind to, for results or to make money and stuff. It's like, sir, you probably had to grind to get to the point that you're at, or you had to put in significant time to get the results that you now are reaping now. So it's all comparative and stuff. But I tell people, if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to sacrifice, a few, like there's a YouTuber that I follow who's a card influencer, and he has a great shop in Ohio, and he's very profitable, and he makes a lot of money. But even focusing 1 hour a day into researching or listing or buying cards, and you can flip the money, 1 hour a day, and dedicating your time to whatever goal you want, whether that's, you want to list a bunch of cards in that hour to hopefully make money on eBay, or you want to research cards for an hour so hopefully you can make money back. Yeah. We all start somewhere. So he has a great philosophy for putting in the work and what it takes to eventually, if you want to snowball it and start making some real money in the hobby. I think he's a great person to look up to as far as advice and everything. But that's the advice I give people. Yeah. Also know what you want to buy too.
Yeah. So, I think we're about to probably wrap up here.
Perfect.
But, I just wanted to say first, thanks again for coming on.
I'm very happy.
Where can people find you, man?
Sure. So my general social media is at Cameron Schultz, and that's SCHULTZ with a Y, and that's my personal page. But I also have an Instagram, and it's Cam's Card Collection, so Cam's Card Collection on Instagram. And you can always reach out if you have any, on either. So I'm like really Eli knows this, and we didn't dive into it. Maybe I come on the pod again and talk, but I'm really into like marketing and finance and things like that. So you can, always reach out if you want to connect on Instagram on my personal or my card page. I want to be an advocate and help and educate. I think that's a big thing that I do on my Instagram too. I always post, like, you probably see it because you're a supporter of my page, and you probably don't even know half the things I'm posting. But
I don't understand it, but I'm always interested.
But if you read it and stuff, I try to provide some, like, education to all my posts, and I tell people what I'm buying and why I'm buying, because I think that's important in this. And when you're in a gatekeeping community, as like collecting is, there's people that never want to tell their secrets and be like that, but you learn from other people, and that's why I think the hobby is so cool, because I'm always learning and meeting new people and seeing what they're buying and why they're buying it and who they're collecting and what they're doing. So I always like to be an advocate and to educate, and because I'm always willing. I also think that's a big thing in life, is always being willing to learn and to take advice from other people.
100%.
Whatever stage. So that's what I do in life and in general. So thank you for having me on, and that's where you can find me.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. So this was a great conversation, and I hope to anybody listening that this inspires you to maybe get out there and do some research on cards, or maybe do some research on some other things that you can buy and resell.
Right. I think that's a cool thing too.
Yeah. So really great having you on, man.
Of course.
We're gonna wrap it up, but
sure.
Rock on, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Ello Vizion experience. I really appreciate you guys for being here to support these awesome people and their stories. If you do like content like this, please do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. And while you're at it, hit the bells for notification, because we got plenty more episodes coming at you only here on the Ello Vizion experience.